to turn off. That's a good one. She's going to start the recording and she's going to turn off the chat so that, but you can let her know if you need to post something, but you can send in the chat to her and to the other co-hosts, and Rachel will post your links and things like that in the chat for you. And our moderator today is Richard Coral from New York and Long Island. And some of you know him from the last session. And Richard, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn, and welcome everybody. So this second of 3 sessions where you have an opportunity to look at the details of the different scenarios. Looking over the people, the faces here, it looks like people are those who have been here before, so they're not necessarily beginners here. So those who are presenting know you're talking to a sophisticated and informed audience. Because there are 6 offerings here, and we're trying to get into in a reasonable amount of time, we're still going to stick to basically the 12-minute presentation time. So that's for both presenting and for asking clarifying questions, not necessarily a debate, just clarifying questions to make sure that we all really understand the different proposals. So we're going to have first a presentation of 2 to 3 minutes. Carolyn will be the timekeeper. I think it's going to be 3 minutes. Is that what you said, Carolyn, for presentation? And after that, 9 minutes remaining, opening up for questions, clarifying questions. So in a modified alphabetical order, Bergen is the first. Do we have someone from Bergen here with us right now?
I think they haven't made it yet. They look like they're a little late.
Okay, so we'll modify the alphabet again, and Brooklyn has proposed a scenario, and Tom is here. And so, Tom, why don't you give an introduction to that? We'll start the timer.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Richard. And I do see some familiar faces who already heard this at our town hall last Wednesday. So I'll just go ahead and give you the basics. We want to give delegates an opportunity to consider a consensus proposal. Right now, we've got 5 or 6, depending on how you count the status quo options for moving forward. You have the 2 different West proposals. You have Bergen's proposal. You have Hank's amendment there. And what we're suggesting is that there be a couple-month period for the advocates for those different proposals to go ahead and try to develop a consensus. There are important questions as to what kind of consultant support we need. Several proposals are advocating to have an organizational development consultant. The Bergen proposal says that no, we don't need an organizational development consultant. That's like one key discussion that has to occur. There are discussions as to the scope of AEU leadership and who's supposed to be responsible for that. Whether you have the AEU selected as per the current mechanism, or do you have 1 vote per society? There are questions with regard to apportionment and how that's supposed to be dealt with. So we're saying, why not give us a couple of months to go ahead and sort all that out, see if we can get the number of proposals down from 5 or 6 to ideally 1, and then have that particular proposal voted on by the delegates in December. You need a month to go ahead and organize the process. You need a month to go ahead and get the proposal out to the delegates, and then you go ahead and vote. I think there are some discussions that really could occur in the short term. I'd love to see a discussion, say, between the Susquehanna Valley reorg folks and Kurt with regard to the respective values of having an organizational development consultant and not having an organizational development consultant. I think that's a critical discussion that I have not seen happen in a one-on-one discussion format, and I'm very disappointed that Bergen is not here with us at this point. Hopefully, they'll show up a little bit later. to go ahead and talk about that. But yeah, that's the goal, to try to achieve consensus. Also, we want to see if there's a way to get members that more involved. Dror Khan, who's also on the call, has advocated that we have a mechanism for individual members to go ahead and meet on the topic of how the AEU should be moving forward. And the hope is that we have a mechanism for members to get together and provide feedback to the overall
So that's
process.
the 3 minutes. Let's,
Okay, thank you.
if
Yeah,
wanna
questions
present or
are
if you want
welcome. There are
to-
more details to this, sure. Open to questions. Or you've heard it all before. That's a possibility too.
well, Tom, maybe you could just expand a little bit on how you see these conversations being organized. There's a lot that that it proposes, a lot of getting together. We have different, the president's is not as strongly organized perhaps as, or identified as the board. How do you foresee this
Yeah,
working?
yeah. And we're doing some revisions to the proposal, and we've gotten some advice on that. And the idea is that the EU board would go ahead and appoint a task force that would be responsible for moving the process forward. And they would do so with the advice of the President's Council. So I think in the existing proposal, it was suggested that the President's Council and the AEU board be co-equal on that. And I think the EU board would have to take the lead role on that to go ahead and move forward. Then that would they'd get organized for a month, set up the task forces for achieving the consensus, set up a task plan. Then you'd have intensive discussions, say in September and October, to try to hammer out a consensus proposal. And then that consensus proposal would, along with the results of the member the feedback sessions, would go ahead and get sent to the delegates for consideration in the second assembly in mid-December.
So we see there's a question from Lee. Lee, go ahead.
Yes, 2 questions, actually. One is, given that the board is having so much difficulty coming to agreement about anything, why would it be easy for them to come to consensus about this without some outside, person to impact it? And second, just a specific on, are you saying 3 months, or is there a specific amount of time that you want this to occur?
Yeah. So let me take the second part. So we're saying a month for the AEU with the advice of the President's Council to go ahead and impanel or empower a task force to work on the consensus. 2 months for the consensus to get worked out with involvement of not only the stakeholders, but hopefully also with some involvement of President's Council and
Abby, could you unmute?
Okay, and then a month to go ahead and vote. As for optimism about this, I mean, I was on the AEU board for 6 years, 3 as treasurer, and during that time, we were dealing with a whole variety of crises related to Boston and Chicago, and there were clergy related issues, and there was a fest thing, all sorts of things that ended up dominating the board discussions. And my experience was that AEU boards really came together to go ahead and deal with crises, and when they had a specific responsibility that they had to go ahead and meet. And I think that this would be, something like that. That's very task oriented, and I think we spent an awful lot of time talking about the difficulties of somebody not liking or having difficulty communicating with somebody else, but I think we're talking about people who really do focus on their jobs when the need arises, and we have to put these things into context.
Okay, and so you're actually saying 4 months?
Yeah. 1 to get ready, 2 to actually work on it, and the bylaws require that if you're going to have another assembly in a proposal, that has to go out a month before before the actual vote. Yeah.
Okay, 4 months. Okay.
All right, I see Patty has her hand up. Patty?
Yeah.
Patty.
Yeah. Hi, Tom. Yeah, so the regeneration plan provides 12 months to build community. and gives us time for talking to each other. So I'm wondering why 4 months in your scenario is a better plan than 12 months.
Yeah, they're not really comparative. I mean, what I'm simply saying is, all right, let's have a thorough discussion of OD consultant versus no OD consultant. You know, if that were something that could be resolved in this period prior to, you know, that the assembly, where Kurt was actively involved in these discussions along with you fine folks from Susquehanna Valley, maybe we could make some progress on that topic initially. I hope we don't end up saying, hey, even though there were ardently and professionally advocated concerns with regard to the OD consultant, that we did not go ahead and take that into account, right? And that's how we ended up with you know, deciding on the OD consultant. There are a lot of merits to the OD consultant idea. I get that. But this is not, this is then saying, hey, let's say we decide the OD consultant is the right way to go forward, then yeah, you go forward with the OD consultant process. But this is not a substitute for that. This is a way for us to resolve issues like OD or not OD. Okay. Other questions?
Chandra?
So arguably whether or not to have an OD consultant or not is one of, well, let me rephrase it. Some of these proposals offer or are proposing major structural changes to the AEU, right? I think whether or not you have an OD or strategic planning person is almost a minor point when we're talking about like major changes about who runs programs, where money goes, that type of thing. And so I almost feel like there's a focus in this plan on it's not really getting to major issues of structure and how members want the AU to be structured. So how do you, that's my dishwasher, sorry. How does your plan deal with that? And also my concern remains that this proposal still is stuck on
2 minutes.
The initial ideas, right? Like that have been proposed. What happens if other ideas come up? How does that get handled? Do we go through another loop of additional proposals? How do you deal with that?
Hey, hi, Chandra. Also, worst of luck to the Orioles. I'm a Yankee fan here. One thing, when we talk about the OD consultant process, my understanding was that the OD consultant was supposed to help us with these organizational issues that concerning the AEU, as well as us dealing with the goals of the AEU and what we hope to go ahead and achieve. I thought the OD process was going to be one where we all focused on all of these matters and had an inclusive, you know, thorough discussion. And some of the proposals confused me a little bit as to whether they're long-term or short-term. Say the One West proposal that talks about farming out responsibility for
1 minute.
yes and FES and other things out to individual societies. Is that temporary during the OD process? Is that a permanent arrangement? So yeah, I guess one thing we have to clarify is the scope of the OD consultant process when it comes to AEU educational matters. So anyway, the argument we're making is we're not quite ready for prime time, and I'd like to issue a public. Eric is here. Great. Okay, so I'm really hoping that we can have engagement on the OD or non-OD approach for moving forward. That's my short-term elevator speech goal here.
All righty.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Tom. In my modified alphabetical presentation, next would be Bergen. Eric is here. Eric, you here to make a presentation on the Bergen plan?
Sure,
Yes.
I'm willing to do so. Thank you.
All right, so what we're doing is we're having 12 minutes for each presentation. The first 3 minutes are up to you for presenting, and the 9 minutes we'd hope to reserve for comments and clarifying questions. No less comment, more clarifying question. Okay, so Eric, give us a little bit of a précis. Now, people who are here have heard other presentations, so they're pretty much up. So now want to go into more of a deep dive on what's involved.
Good, thank you. And if I may, I'll share my screen. Let me put that up there. This really is the heart right here of the Bergen plan. And we've given consideration to all the different plans. I don't want to characterize them for others, but I'll say for me, what the Bergen plan does is it is a very clear and well-defined plan. It says, here are the things that we're going to do. The money that we would otherwise spend on an organizational development consultant to have further internal conversations, we're actually going to use that money to support the individual societies, whether large or small, to help them build capacity, to help them build skills, especially skills around grant writing, to coordinate amongst the different societies in order to undertake a national ethical action project, which you see here, and to support smaller societies, especially by returning some of those funds that would otherwise go to an organizational development consultant directly to those societies in order to fund innovation microgrants. I think we recognize that a lot of societies don't have that capacity. And let me say, I'll be very honest, the main drawback of the Bergen plan is that instead of kicking the can down the road for 4 months or a year, or instead of saying, well, let's just, save our capital, shut things down for an extended period of time and see if we have the wherewithal at some future date to come back. The drawback of the Bergen plan is that it requires effort on everyone's part. Now, Bergen is happy to provide the leadership and the coordination and some of the skills and resource that we have to support those efforts. But if the different societies don't have the spoons to get things going now, then they don't have the spoons. And I understand that. But this is a plan that says, let's get started now. Rather than try to read our way out of the issues that we have, as I've heard Dr. Hooper's very astute critique, or rather than talk our way out of the issues that we have, which frankly is what the organizational development consultant is to me, this gives us an opportunity to work our way out of the issues that we face and to do very clear, practical, progressive actions. So if you're on board for that, I mean, I know a lot of the people in our societies are tired. You've been working in the fields for decades. And, I've only been a couple of decades working in the
3
field.
minutes. The 3 minutes are done.
Thank you. So
We have 9 minutes.
that's
to go.
really what it proposes, and I'm happy to take questions about it.
Okay, there any questions? I see Tom has a question. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, hi, Eric. Thanks for doing this. So this question of do we have an OD consultant or not is a really critical question for us, and I'm really hoping that there can be engagement between the Susquehanna folks and friends and you guys on that particular topic. And I understand, Kurt has his experience as an OD consultant. He's saying it's inappropriate and that's not exactly what we need, and we can go ahead and work out all this stuff ourselves. Do you have a list of things do you think we can do ourselves? Do you have a way to go ahead and flesh that out so we can try to unpack that issue and get it resolved? Are you open to having a one-on-one deep dive discussion sometime prior to the 29th with the Susquehanna folks to try to go ahead and sort this out?
Okay, we have a lot of people in line for questions, so let's try
Okay,
to be
thank you. That's the
concise.
question. Thank you.
Absolutely. And in fact, I've reached out this morning. I made a post on the President's Council, which I commit to follow up on, which is to reach out to anyone who has outstanding concerns that we'd like to discuss.
Lee has.
I'm sorry, I am a little behind in my communication with folks. I know there's been some communication going on, I am a little bit behind. It's been a bit of a crazy week. I'm actually on vacation this morning with my family. So, but I assure you, make good on my pledge to communicate and be in conversation.
So, Eric, I have the same question I had with the previous speaker, and that is, how will you solve your dysfunctional board issues, given that that hasn't occurred yet?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean. My dysfunctional board, I mean, my board is highly functional.
No, the
I'm
AU board,
sorry,
we're
the
talking about
board.
AU.
That is what we're talking about, the
There's
AEU.
a
board.
structural change being proposed by the Bergen.
Sure. Good. I
Bergen
mean, I'll be
plan.
happy to discuss, what, I mean, again, it's been said that the AEU is a congregational polity. It should really be represented by the societies. I think it was a mistake in 2006 when we lost the individual society representation on the AEU board, because that to me was the beginning of the disconnection between the individual societies and the AEU. We used to have a person who had who had dual representation. They were on the AEU board and they were on the Bergen board, and that helped really keep communication going two ways. Now, of course, there still would be proportional representation in the assembly, but it would only be the board that would have one vote per member society. So it's important to remember we still have that sort of bicameral operation or governance. But I will say that unfortunately, we feel very disconnected in the Bergen Society, and that's one of the main reasons why we think we should go back to that pre-2006 status, which to me was an error. Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn has hand up, then Chandra.
I'm wearing my ethical action hat right now. And one of the components of your proposal is to have a national ethical action project. We have a mandate for the Ethical Action Committee at the AEU that we support societies in their actions, but there's no mandate that pushes us to a national action except to use our moral voice in the community. We actually have at least one board member, maybe more, who doesn't believe that we should do any national action from the AEU. And we do have some attempts working there, but it's not something that's been encouraged and supported over time. So this is a little bit new. What I'm wondering is—
Question, come to the question.
Sorry, yeah, what I'm wondering is, do you see positive functions for the member societies to come out of this investment in a national project?
I do think so. Yes, I mean, that's part of what's proposed here, and I think that that's something that comes after a period of skill building and capacity development. And again, I do not want this. Bergen is here as a resource, right? But we're not taking things over. We really do want to continue that discussion. I think that ultimately, the individual societies do have to make choices as to whether or not they want to participate in a national initiative like this. But I think that there is a good role for the AEU, not in pushing, but rather in coordinating and facilitating this type of national project, national initiative in that regard. And so, yes, I think that, whether it happens in the first year or the second year or in subsequent years, because again, we believe this model will work well. And so it is an ongoing and evolving discussion as to what that project is.
3 minutes to go. Chandra, then Anya.
So I have a question about communication and sort of flexibility, right? So something similar to the Bergen proposal came to the board earlier this year, and the board wanted it to be reworked to remove any conflicts of interest. And in response to that, Kurt Collier, who's leader at Bergen, who had been on the board for a month or two, left the board, right? And so I'm curious as to how we work together moving forward. If someone who says they have organizational development skills, if their response to something is to walk off and not talk, not be responsive to inquiries, right? Because it wasn't shut down. It was like, how do we make this work in a way that is equitable and with integrity? And if you could address that, please.
Well, I can't speak for Kurt. I know, and I won't go into the details here.
2 minutes.
There have been a lot of varied communications concerns. From Bergen County, we've reached out for communication from the board as to what processes are in place to resolve and to respond to complaints, or out to the AEU board, especially after what we felt was an inappropriate response to a complaint that was received. So, and again, we've been told that we can engage in a restorative justice circle around those issues, but that was done prior to any real investigation or inquiry on the part of the AEU board. So I think there are some precursors before those types of discussions can go forward, including
okay.
responses to what I feel are Bergen's very fair and realistic questions that have been deferred.
Okay, 1 minute to go. Anya, go ahead.
Thanks. So Bergen brought in $6,000 in grants last year. I'm curious why we should believe that Bergen would have the capacity to bring in more.
Well, 6,000 was Kurt's first year. We've got $60,000 year to date. And we used much of that money to support what we call the Youth Conservation Corps. Take a look on our website, on our Facebook page. You'll see some of the work that we're doing. Again, the key is that this type of work is scalable and can work even in a small society. Even with 1 or 2 people, there are things that can be done to build and to continue to accelerate that capacity growth.
Well, we only have a couple of seconds. We have like 10 seconds left. I just want to wrap up real quick, Eric.
Great, thank you. Well, I encourage everyone to take a look. A lot of these proposals, including the Bergen proposal, are available on various town halls where they're discussed in more depth and more detail. And I appreciate this opportunity to share with everyone here. Thank you.
Great, Eric. Thank you so much.
I'm going to have to sign off. I'm on vacation today, so
Enjoy.
thank you
Well,
all.
great.
Have a
Thank you
wonderful
for
day.
coming. Thank you for taking the time, Eric. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, in my modified alphabetical order, Susquehanna is next, not for the S, but because of the H. So Susquehanna can make its presentation. Go ahead, 12 minutes.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I just want to check in how everyone is feeling. And I know the chat's closed, but if it were open, I'd be asking you to put in a word just to express your feelings at this point. Rachel is going to put a slide on the screen for us. Thank you, Rachel. The original regeneration plan has received a few friendly amendments that we have incorporated into the proposal. And these are the highlights, and you will find the updated regeneration plan link on the Assembly webpage, and Rachel will also put it into the chat for your convenience. Clarifying that this proposal is not a one-size-fits-all societies, and it does not rush you to vote. It is a 12-month, not a 4-month period of working together to imagine our future. 12 months. During the first quarter, we will bring in restorative justice trainers and professionals to help us develop advanced skills throughout the societies to tackle conflict and harm and build community. Another clarification is this plan is not pausing programs. This has been confusing since we first started talking. We are reprioritizing our focus to be future focused, to move from our legacy to our future. We want to keep this simple. It is clearly stressing people out that there are now new proposals and more motions. We hear you. The hallmark of this proposal is caring for all of us, creating a culture of care. We are all stretched thin and not looking forward to having another assembly. This is too important to delay. We want to keep it simple. On July 29th, let's come together and invest in our future by voting. There will be plenty of time to shape everything, to talk and take our time, and we will be more thoughtful if we are not all exhausted. Let's keep it simple. There will continue to be 11 board members this year to address any issues and problems and ensure we have the best year ever. In addition, there will be a delegate team. It would be exciting to not only have delegates engaged once a year, but all year long. We would like one delegate from each society to be part of the team structure. Each delegate will attend quarterly board meetings and pre-board meetings and join a team. I'd like to stress that the OD is a guide in this process. And finally, we have eliminated the executive team. We feel confident that the full board will decide after the elections to how they will best operate. And I will
Okay, it's 3
address
minutes.
two questions immediately for our question time. I have two questions that I'm sure people might have, and I'd like to address those. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, the first question, what is a team? I do want to make sure people understand that. The teams will be diverse and inclusive small groups focused on temporary projects that build capacity and progress in the regeneration period. These teams will be created and disbanded in consultation with the organizational development consultant and the board. An example of a team may include an education team grounded in equity and inclusion. The education team will consist of members throughout the movement with EE experience, including young people and students. They may
Patty?
spend
Yeah, we have a question.
Okay, I will take it, but I'm going to come back to what a team
All
is
right.
and what is pre-board meeting. Rebecca.
Okay,
Yeah, I was going to have my question about the executive team, but you've got rid of that. So I need to better understand now what your plan is. Your plan is to have the entire board work with the OD, and meet only quarterly, but working directly with the OD and setting up these teams. Is that accurate?
Okay, so let me continue here. I did say that these are temporary projects that teams and small groups will be working on, and they will be created and disbanded through the in consultation with the OD and the board. I don't think anyone is saying that the only time people will be gathering and discussing and working is going to be quarterly. I see this as being an ongoing process throughout the year.
But in your proposal, in your
Mhm.
resolution,
Mhm.
it identifies quarterly board meetings. It identifies apparently now that the entire board will work with the OD, and they will set up the teams, they will disband the teams, they will do whatever we were doing with the teams. But at this moment,
Uh-huh.
you have the entire board working with the OD on a quarterly basis.
I think that is accurate, and if I'm incorrect with that, Rachel, can you clarify
Yes,
that for us?
I'm happy to. So the only thing that's quarterly are the board meetings, Rebecca. That's the
Okay.
only thing that's quarterly.
Okay.
The process of regeneration is something that will happen every day, every week, every month throughout the 12 months. So people will be discussing and meeting throughout the period. The quarterly is just the board meetings and the pre-board meetings that Patty needs time to let you know what that is.
So how do decisions about what team is going to get formed, that is a decision the board is going to have to make and decide on with the OD's function. I understand that. So the board will just meet whenever they need to meet to make those decisions. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if that needs to happen, but obviously at the beginning, of the process, there'll be a retreat and there will
5
be a work
minutes.
plan created so that all those things will start out at the very beginning in September so that everyone has work plans and teams will be formed, right? And then there will be check-ins and work plans discussed at those quarterly meetings, right? Those will be, how are we progressing? What are we doing? What are and the board, of course, will also be in contact with the OD, who will be in contact with the teams. So there will be very good tracking and documentation.
Okay, I think I get it. Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn and then Liz.
I don't want to be the person that goes into process in too much detail, but Patty, I see that your amended version has been posted on the delegate website just this morning at 9:30. And it doesn't have any indication of where the changes are from the original. So we need to talk very soon about making sure that the changes are highlighted so that when delegates vote on it, they know what they're voting for.
Sure, great, Carolyn,
Okay.
thanks.
Can I ask a process question? If we haven't voted already, why do there need to be redlined?
Because
Because
the
people are
bylaws say
informed.
that whatever will be voted on must be presented to the delegates 30 days in advance. If we make changes after that 30 days, they also have to be notified of what the changes are.
That would make
Okay,
sense.
Liz.
No.
So I just have two questions that I didn't hear clarified. One is that there would be delegates. You're talking about the delegate process. So some societies have 2, some have 8. They would be part of the AU board. They would work with, they would
No.
And from what
this, does that, am I?
I
So
think it's
I did-
different. The delegates to the assembly are not the delegates that they're talking about.
It can be the same, but it's one delegate per.
3
society.
minutes.
Right.
One delegate per society meets with the board quarterly.
And in the pre-meeting.
And the pre-board meeting. Can I
So
explain
they are
what the pre-
part of the board, a liaison with the board.
Yes.
So the board would consist of, okay. My second question is, will the teams function as a task force and report back to the board or be a task force to the OD? So teams versus a
Both
task,
and. It's both and, Liz.
okay.
Yeah.
Tom. Tom,
You-
you're still muted.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Hi, Patty again.
Hi, Tom.
So have you, fine folks in Susquehanna sent a detailed point-by-point letter or email to Kurt and to Eric, asking them how they can go ahead and provide the benefits of the OD without actually having an OD, from an outcome perspective? And then my
2
second question.
minutes.
Okay, then the other thing is, I think that'd be great.
Go ahead.
Otherwise, I have to take a crack at that, and that, in terms of advocating consensus, and I'm going to make mistakes. I know that for sure. And then just pointing out that in the 4 months, it's 4 months to try to reconcile the proposals and 12 months to actually go ahead and do the work, and they're not comparable other than the fact that they're expressed in what, ordinal numbers? So, all right, but yeah, really, write it down. Say, hey, Kurt, hey, hey, Eric, what are you talking about? That'd be a great letter to write.
Looking for consensus. Contra.
So I just want to raise concern for this deference to one society and just be mindful that we should really be trying to, because that same question wasn't asked of Bergen, have they reached out to other societies? And so to be mindful, we do want to keep an open process and we do want the best ideas out there, and continuing to assume that the best ideas are already the ones that are on the table is really closing ourselves off to actual growth.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify too, these pre-board meetings, they're meant to
45
cultivate
seconds.
trust, inclusivity, equity, and encourage deeper conversations to the upcoming board meetings. So I think that's an important approach that hasn't been mentioned anywhere else.
Mhm. I guess one question is, we won't have an executive director. We will have a president, I guess, of the board. The question is, during this time when board just meets quarterly, who's in charge?
Who's in charge?
Yeah, who's in charge?
Is that your
Well, I would
question?
feel that's going to be a question for the board to come up with, those
Okay.
are things that are going to have to be in discussions right after the elections. How do they want to operate?
Mhm. Okay. All right, that's it. That's Susquehanna. The following H would be Novus. Is there anyone from Novus here today? I put Novus after because that was basically built on the Susquehanna plan. And all right, well, that's available to see. So Washington has two plans, one referred to as Washington 1, and I think Sarah is going to be presenting that.
Yeah, I'm going to be presenting both of them. So I'll start with the proposal to reimagine the AEU as a society-led organization. So this proposal reimagines the AEU as an organization primarily focused on peer-to-peer collaboration between its member societies. By eliminating most functions of the AEU, this proposal would create a situation in which it would become obvious if there are functions that are needed and should be reinstated, or whether there are entirely new directions that should be pursued. So it's a way of like clearing the board and rebuilding from scratch. Under this proposal, the board is responsible for ensuring that all legal requirements for the AEU's continued operation are fulfilled. And also the board is responsible for ensuring that key infrastructure such as websites, email systems, and electronic collaboration environments exist and are sustained. The operations of AEU committees would be suspended for 1 year, and committee membership would be vacated, except for the 2 committees that are required by the AEU bylaws, the Board Development Committee and the Leadership Committee. And then the board would choose whether to repopulate the Assembly Committee if they make an effort to ensure that the next business meeting would take place. The role of the President's Council the President's Council would take on an increased role, operating as a hub for collaboration between the societies. As far as staffing, the AEU would discontinue the practice of employing staff at this time. The AEU treasurer, assisted by other board members, would take over direct financial control of the organization. And maintenance of a physical office in New York would be discontinued. The board would be directed to collaborate with the National Leaders Council to ensure that it's possible for individuals to become ethical culture leaders, to receive the support in that role from colleagues, and to be accountable for their actions. In terms of finance, the existing apportionment system would be eliminated at the end of the AEU's current fiscal year. The AEU would then be prohibited from spending more than 3.4% of all fund balances under its control. And that percentage is chosen with the goal of causing the funds to be available in perpetuity. So this plan protects the AEU's financial resources. And I'll stop there and take questions.
Okay, any clarifying questions? Well, I have just a thought, a question. This and some of the other proposals talk about stopping things first and rethinking them. Now, we had a year of where many things did stop already, so that may, in many respects, be 2 years where things have not happened. Is this really wise to see the end of all activity? What's the guarantee that people will resume? Some things are, living operations. Once they're put out of business, they don't really resume at all. So why that method of stopping first?
I would say it's up to the delegates to decide if this is a wise approach. Of course, there is no guarantee that things would be resumed. So that would require the commitment from the societies. I think the trade-off is, yeah, on one hand, it is difficult to resume things once they've been stopped. But the trade-off is they may be able to resume and the overall AEU structure may be able to be brought out of the ashes in a way that is so much better and more effective with such a clearer strategy and goals and priorities that it would develop momentum toward a new and improved AEU in the future.
Okay, so we have Carolyn, then Lee.
Couple of quick questions. When you're talking about vacating the committees and then you name a couple that are quote required by the bylaws list a lot of committees as standing committees, doesn't detail what they're supposed to do, but names them as quote standing committees. It's been a challenge sometimes to find enough people to volunteer for those committees, and so turnover is fairly limited at times as well. And so they sort of get, well, anyway, are you not disregarding, but are you interpreting the bylaws such that when a specific description of what a committee should do, that is a mandate from the bylaws that committee exists, and when it's just named, it's you can let it go? Or will we have to make structural changes to the bylaws on that? And just as a second point, closing the New York office, the Articles of Incorporation from 1947 specify that the AEU will have its main office on Manhattan, is the island, I guess. I don't know geography, sorry, Manhattan. So
6
it
minutes.
may end up having to be, sorry, may end up having to be of like a mailbox, but there still will have to be some presence on Manhattan unless we reincorporate. Sorry, just questions.
Ms. Sarah?
Yeah, so the question of your first question, maybe someone who's more familiar with the bylaws can tell us if there's a special role for the Board Development Committee and the Leadership Committee versus other committees. My understanding is that somehow those two committees were like sort of special or different and really needed to be continued, whereas the other ones were more discretionary. But again, someone who knows the bylaws better than I would be able to address that.
Wow.
And then in terms of your second question, are those articles are they modifiable at all, or?
We may have to, I don't know. The Articles of Incorporation are on the delegate website to look at. I just wondered if you had.
You can change them. You can change your articles and be incorporated in a different state.
Thank you.
Let's move on, Lee, and then Tom.
I just wanted to understand, I'm sorry, it's, I don't know more about it, but so you're talking about eliminating the AEU as a functioning organization, is that correct? Except for legal, any legal ramifications for all the societies that are under its umbrella, is that correct?
Not
Permanently or just for a year?
Not eliminating the AEU as an organization, no, but stripping it down to bare bones to set the stage for rebuilding. The board,
Okay.
the board would still continue to function, but many of the other functions of the AEU would be put on hiatus, or they would be suspended for the time.
So
being.
you would function virtually because there wouldn't be an office anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so all the programs, like any youth programs or training for leaders or anything like that, wouldn't exist anymore. It would have to be rebuilt newly if that's what you decided you needed. Is that correct?
Training, the proposal says that the leadership committee would continue to operate to ensure that leaders in training could be certified and that officiants can have their licenses renewed. And it would be necessary to find a way to continue to provide funding for that. using existing AEU funds.
Okay, but there wouldn't actually be an office to do that. I mean, a place.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay, thank you. I
Yeah,
just understand.
I understood for the year, and not just the Washington proposal, but some of the others as well, that they would not be encouraging new leaders in training to start the training. Everything that would be suspended. So there wouldn't be any new people in the pipeline, just be able to serve those who are in, which is basically Louise.
Okay.
Is that right?
And also another point is that the National Leaders Council would still continue to function, as well as the President's Council.
Virtually.
Well,
That's how they're.
well, they would organize themselves, yeah,
Yeah,
because they're not actually, they're affiliated with the AEU.
Okay.
but we don't meet in New York. We don't meet at the headquarters, so we would, yeah, those.
2 minutes. We have 2 minutes more. If anybody has a question. I guess really the theme is, and I think some of the questions were, well, let me just defer to Tom. Tom has his hand up.
Mhm. Okay, thanks, Sarah. So I think one of your proposals starts off with words to the effect that we basically function as a bunch of individual societies anyway. And thinking about ethical culture, as an atheist, ethical culture is extremely important to me as a vehicle for providing a congregation and supporting people of similar beliefs or lack thereof, or other non-theists. I think ethical culture also provides support for the LGBTQ plus population, and between atheists and LGBT folks, we're talking about two of the most vilified groups within society. Does Wes see a value for the AEU in doing that?
1
that
minute.
is unique among such organizations? What did you really mean that we're just a bunch of individual societies who work together occasionally? What was your intent there?
I think that statement reflects the current status of the function of the AEU and its relationship to societies, that the day-to-day activities of the societies really have very little to do with the AEU currently. And that if we stripped down the AEU and rebuilt it in a more effective way, we might be better able to achieve those, to advocate for those priorities, including atheism and LGBTQ rights more effectively if we, again, broke it down to its foundation and rebuilt it.
Yeah, well, I think in unity there is strength, and I'm really concerned about what you guys were saying.
I agree that there is strength in unity, but I don't think that AEU currently facilitates that unity in a way that could be maximally effective.
Maybe if you all met in assembly, like the good old days, we'd meet each other and then discover that strength. Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. Now, did you say you were also going to present Washington 2?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So again, same rules will apply. The first 3 minutes, you'll make the presentation, and after that, we'll open it up for clarifying questions.
Yes.
Here you go.
So this, the motion to reform the AEU would create space for discernment and transformation of the AEU by hiring an organizational development consultant to work with the AEU board and the movement at large to build a new AEU endowed with coherent structures, an ethos of servant leadership, systems of authority and accountability that reflect our ethical culture values. To permit a singular focus on that large task of transforming the AEU, this proposal stipulates that nearly all day-to-day AEU operations would be paused. Again, we're talking about the coming year, not in perpetuity. Those operations would be paused. The board would have, the AEU would have no employees aside from the OD consultant, and key AEU programs would be outsourced to specific societies for the 23-24 year. And that outsourcing would be supported by grants from the AEU. So the expenses of the AEU would be cut drastically for the 23-24 year, And those expenses would be paid using the existing approximately $200,000 of spendable portion of the endowment. And so because those costs could be covered by that 220K endowment, the society apportionments would be optional for the coming year, 23-24. Not suspended. Apportionments wouldn't be eliminated, they would be made optional. So if societies voluntarily contributed, I think the number is 20% of their current apportionment, then that would cover the costs associated with this annual plan and would eliminate the amount that would be needed to be drawn down from AEU funds. So this plan can be, correction, not 20%, 50%. So if societies cut their apportionments by 50%, then a drawdown of AEU funds would not be necessary. I think that's all I can do.
Just to clarify, I think last time when we were together, you presented this plan. Is that right? And Sonia presented the first plan you just described.
Correct.
Okay, right. So this was what we called Washington 1, and the first one you said today is what we called Washington 2. I don't know if that's a big, if everyone's using the same kind of designation I am, but just to clarify, does this one, what's a good name to distinguish?
We call this the motion to reform.
I'm sorry, reform. Okay, so is the reform with an OD consultant and the other one, the regeneration, is not with an OD, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's one big distinction. But both of them talk about stopping everything and redesigning or rethinking them all.
Correct. A major distinction is that under the motion to reform, the motion that I just described,
Reform.
key AEU programs would be outsourced to societies.
The 4 societies that are associated with them, they would take charge of those big programs. Right. Okay. There wouldn't be a membership committee, so there wasn't anything for that. And there wasn't an ethical action committee. I noticed that. Okay, Ken has a hand up. Go ahead, Ken.
Hi, thanks everyone for the work you're doing. And this is just one small aspect. Why would a drawdown of AEU funds be not advantageous? If this is not a time for investment, what is a time for investment? How would that corpus be better used in the future than be used as an investment to guide the rest of people who try to bring what we're bringing to others? So it's not a criticism of any other part of it. I'm saying when we're looking at it, let's invest in the future. That's money that's been there. It's there for a reason. It's there for the future. So the question is, why are you afraid to draw down? No. Why does it specifically? Why did you specifically mention avoiding a drawdown? Is that part of the proposal or commentary? Thanks.
The proposal is to make apportionments optional. And in terms of discussing the consequences of that, I think it was important to clarify that optional does not mean eliminated, and that to the extent that societies opt to pay apportionments in some amount, the amount that would be drawn down from AEU funds would be reduced, right? It's a trade-off. And I think the larger context in my mind is that the societies are struggling financially. At West, we've had to let staff go. We're really operating with a bare bones staff and facing some very difficult financial decisions. And having apportionments be optional is a way I think, of building trust among the societies that we're not going to be asked to spend another dollar. We're not going to be forced to send another dollar to the AEU until the ship rights itself. So I think it's a way of giving it that confidence to the societies about the value of the AEU and allowing them then to participate in a voluntary way for the coming year.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We have 5 minutes left. Jan and then Tom.
I'm interested in how you see the rebuilding of all the committees, et cetera, that are let go. You know, you're expecting a groundswell from the grassroots and leadership coming up that way. You know, given the fact that it is, you know, difficult to staff committees in the first place, is it, where is this to come from?
So I think there would be a process during the year of discernment and clarifying the purpose of the AEU, which would then lead to decisions about what elements need to be restored and which ones can go by the wayside, and how to reform them, reactivate them most effectively.
Okay, Tom and then John.
Yeah. Hi again, Sarah. I was wondering if Wes is working on developing consensus between the first Wes proposal and the second Wes proposal. And if not, what do you see as the barriers to achieving consensus between your two proposals? And then related to that, for the ones that, for the aspects of it that talk about the OD consultant, do you see Hank's proposal as a potential amendment to both, or to a consolidated Wes proposal? Thanks.
Thanks for the questions. I don't see a consensus between the two West proposals emerging. I think that is unlikely. The West delegation will be discussing amongst ourselves how to prioritize, or how we might prioritize between the two. And then the second question was about, I'm sorry, something about the OD consultant.
Yeah, it's about the Novus Hank Gassner proposal, which is an amendment to the OD the piece, to the extent that you, or at least he's phrasing it as an amendment to the Susquehanna proposal. I'm wondering if you guys are amenable to his proposal being amendments to your proposals as well, or am I missing something?
I would have to give that some more thought about how his amendments might relate to ours.
Well, basically, it's maintaining about 6 functions
Yeah.
that he considered critical functions of the AU.
Yeah, I think there could be discussion to be had about what are the critical functions. Our reform scenario identifies 4 that we think are essential and that have good standing to be supported during the coming year. There's room for discussion about those, but what we
2
want,
minutes.
what we want to avoid is the AEU being overloaded with day-to-day tasks that will take priority above redevelopment work.
Okay, thank you. And John?
So I'm term limited, so I'll be soon going off as chair of the AEU membership committee. I believe that part of what needs to be changed in the year or 2 to come is to not have bylaws that stipulate all of these standing committees. The existence of a committee is different from the existence of a program. And so I was very much involved in programs, specifically the Consulting Leader Program and New Society Development. And it is very unwieldy. It is not very nimble at all. And so one of the things I've appreciated is a shift to a team orientation under the interim executive director, including regarding the programs I just mentioned. Is far more nimble to have teams that come and go, what you've seen in the regeneration proposal. So under the reform proposal, It does also create more space by having these various committees inactive to create room for something better that doesn't have all these structures that tie us down.
Thanks, Sean.
Oh, guess who's here? Hank. What time zone is he on? Well, there's just only a few more seconds left for the Washington 1 plan. So thank you very much, Sarah. It's now zeroing out. Thanks for that description. And Hank, I see you've just come. We have not had a presentation on the Novus plan because you were going to present that, but you come in the nick of time if you want to. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap up. Give it a minute there. Hank, if you want to comment.
Katrina, can you see what can be done on getting my sound?
We hear you now, Hank.
We're here. She just needs to turn on the video for you.
He or us.
No, it's not here. What happened?
Okay.
There you are. Okay, there you are, Hank. All right. So,
can you
go ahead. So we had 12 minutes for each proposal, and we've gone through all of them, but we have not had the Novus proposal
Katrina?
described. If you'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about it, I don't think I'm being heard.
Perhaps somebody could put in the chat a note to Hank that we can hear him.
Okay. Hank, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
And now he's muted.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a. Well, just remind you all that that was basically the Susquehanna plan, but it preserved about 6 basic functions that may be considered critical to the ongoing operation of the AU, so that when a new plan is devised, they'll still be in operation. So it's a is there anything that anyone would like to say crosstalk wise? Any comment, reaction? Ellen?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on all of the plans that go back to an individual society being represented, having been through that era. You know, we're over 20. Do you know that the board, which has less than 12, cannot function? Imagine how it would be with over 20. It will never function. We do have Zoom, which is something, since we tried it the last time, that may help, because getting together in person certainly didn't work. People even slept through the meetings. It was quite something. However, what we had hoped to do was to have a representative kind of thing where 2 or 3 different societies could get together and have a representative on the board. That to us at the time made sense. I don't see how any of the plans that envision people working together in a group that is more than 20 are ever going to work. That's my only comment.
No, thanks a lot, Ellen. Of course, right now we have 11 people and they have not been functioning. So we're trying to think maybe the different, even going back to the old days might work. Perry, and then Dror, and then Contra.
Thank you. I want to respond to Tom's questions to various presenters about the possibility that they would get together with people with competing proposals and try and work out compromises or hybrids or something. I think in many cases that would be trying to square the circle. I think we have competing visions for what should happen next year in terms of our process for discernment or in terms of striking out in a new direction. And I don't think it's realistic to think that between now and the assembly in particular, there's much room for more than tinkering around the edges of these proposals.
Thank you, Perry. Dror, then Contra.
Thank you. I think we actually have quite a bit of agreement that we need to change something at the AEU, that we got a real problem. And now we're in my mind, nobody's saying, hey, everything is going beautifully. Let's just keep going down the same road. So so thank you very much to the team that brought in the idea that we need to do something, shake us up, whatever the words will be. And we're seeing that actually, as would happen with a group like ours, has raised so many people who are coming up with better ways of shaking ourselves up. So whatever happens, we're on the right track of making some change. Ellen McBride, I don't know if that's really true, that having more people and more voices is such a bad idea, because what I haven't heard so far today is anything about how do we get the members involved. I'm hearing a lot more about getting the board and some more delegates. And as a person who's not on the board and who spends quite a bit of time at many different society events, not my own. I go to Baltimore for some groups. I go to Rochester for some groups. I'm in Brooklyn. I go to NYSEC for some groups. And I find these activities from the sun, and Chicago, Ken waves his hand. So I find these activities as a member actually really exciting, and I'm going to miss that. And I'm going to miss the All Society platforms, which takes place primarily by volunteers joining together and bringing in programs. So I just want to say that, where are the members? Where is the focus on getting our members, let alone new members? So I really wish, I'm glad, whatever happens on the 29th, probably, unless some people feel like losers and walk away and never come back, probably is going to be good. And squaring the circle, whether it's a square, whether it's a circle, it doesn't really matter. We're going to do something that's going to shake ourselves up. And I do hope personally that we don't throw out the ways and the things that keep members engaged, like myself. I think there would be others. If you'd come to some of the things that are going on, they're really quite good. And finding out what other societies are doing. It's not a matter of like to find out. We're doing good things. We're having fun. We're meeting people, and Zoom is solving the problem of loneliness for many people. I just want, so that was like a speech. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dror.
Sharing this up. Thank you for making some change happen. We need it. And last time Sarah spoke, she said, I asked the same thing you asked, Richard. How do we know this is ever going to wake up and come back? And she said, because we all, so many of us, I'm paraphrasing Sarah, so many of us care and love ethical culture, not as at the AEU, but, and I know it's because I've talked to Ken about this, because we have a mission of making a better world and including, being very inclusive. And with all that momentum and all that desire, it's really unlikely we're just going to say, well, forget about it. We're never going to come back. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dror. Thank you so much. Abby, and then Tom.
Hi, thanks. I want to take a little bit from what Dora said and a little bit from what I think it was Ellen said, that a body that is trying to vision and govern effectively with over 20 people, I agree, is going to be very difficult. However, one common feature of many plans is wanting to increase the representativeness of the connection between societies and the central AEU. And perhaps there is a way to do that that does not involve making the board this gigantic unwieldy mess. I think finding that is going to take more than the couple weeks before the assembly, and in fact, more than the 4 months that the consensus plan puts forward. So I think that I can confidently say that any idea of how to bring the AEU back from where it is now and reimagine it for the future would include that feature. I guess that's all I'll say.
Maybe you're talking about a constitutional convention in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, I think we do have to talk to each other for an extended period of time first. And in terms of coming, I guess I'll say in terms of the proposal to come to consensus, I love the idea of seeking consensus. I think it's great. I am personally more interested in getting started on a broader project of figuring out where we want the AEU to be in the future. And there are several of these plans have one, none of them is perfect, but they are all better than the status quo.
Tom, then Sarah, and then Jay.
Okay, so in response, and thank you, Perry and Abby, for those perspectives. I think we should recognize that we have a discrete, finite set of issues that can be resolved in a finite period of time with regard to moving forward. There's OD versus no OD, there's weak AEU versus strong AEU, centralized, decentralized, apportionment, no apportionment, full apportionment, optional, voluntary apportionment, whatever. There's the grant piece, and then there's what Hank said about a variety of services. This is not an infinite set of things that we need to go ahead and resolve. Okay, if we could even take Trang's wonderful matrix and go ahead and shrink that and come up with an agenda for things that have to be resolved in the consensus process. It's entirely possible the 2 months we allotted for hammering this stuff out might be too long, might be done in a month. So, I think we just need to spend a little bit of time trying to sort this out. And the idea that we have to have these two dissimilar overlapping, Perry, your geometric analysis isn't quite right. We're talking about multi-dimensional space here. We're not talking about two-dimensional to get this resolved. Let's focus on our discrete set of issues, get those resolved, and then go ahead and move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Tom. We have 8 minutes left before our time is up. Sarah, then Jay, and then I see Patty.
Thanks, Richard. I have a comment more about process than content. I've noticed that this meeting and the previous scenarios discussion, I feel like the best conversation happens in the time left at the last 20 minutes when we're all speaking freely to each other. So I think the structure that we've had in the first 2 scenario meetings made a lot of sense and allowed everybody to have designated time to discuss their proposals. But I don't know that it would be very helpful to recapitulate this at the 3rd meeting. So I would like to suggest that we adopt a more open agenda or format for that 3rd meeting that would allow some more of this free conversation. I don't know what the agenda or structure for the 3rd meeting will be. Maybe somebody's already planning that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially since now we see that those who are most interested are the same people. Of course, having time allotted for each proposal gets each proponent down here because they don't want to be left out. Otherwise, if it's more open, they may miss the meeting. Jay and then Patty, and we have just about 6 more minutes. Jay, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you're located. I just, I really want to say, I've been listening, and what I see is, I see something where there's a lot of things that people need to go back and revisit and probably look at within their plans. But I want to go back to this idea of where the people, where the members within this movement. And I think that has been a deep concern of mine. A lot of these plans are very well rooted and situated based off of particular societies and their situations and their relationships to the AEU and some of the downfalls that they've had. So a lot of these plans are rooted in trauma, organizational trauma, and relationship. And so as much as I like, I like to think that we are doing everything based off of a collective summary, I think we need to look at the fact that, like, when we consider maybe an unbiased approach, the reason why we brought in an interim director is because we need to look at our organization from an unbiased approach. And now we have all of these new scenarios that are pointing out some of the traumatic experiences that we have. I'm hoping that at some point we begin to look and strategize very clearly on how to effectively approach this from a collective end. I would also point out too, just that Zia had been doing a lot of work around currently vice president had been doing a lot of work around the bringing together of talking to various societies and giving reports back. And it's funny, as much as we want to get people involved and other societies involved, there are some people who were not able to even get responses from other societies. So imagine having 20-something society people sitting in a room together and you can't even get them to talk now. It's quite difficult. And I think we need to really define how we engage our members. And that's a society focus. That's not only just an AEU focus, and how we bring that work also forward. And as it relates to these new plans that we want to enhance, which I hope that with the new board or with the board that's up, that's looking forward to stepping in, that we actually can kind of engage that community of members that it doesn't get stuck in this little silo here, but it actually is more people than just this group. And so, yeah, I just want to point that out because I think that's just something that we need to be very mindful of as our own societal trauma and the way that we disseminate information to members and who we call members.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. That's so true. Carolyn?
All right. I just wanted to point out, particularly in response to Sarah's comment, the next discussion of scenario resolutions is on Tuesday, the 18th of July at 8:00 p.m. Perhaps would it be acceptable at the beginning of that session, we just do a quick poll and see if people want more scenario presentations by the 12-minute limit or just 90 minutes of open discussion? And then if everybody wants the discussion, we can just go ahead and do it. It's no problem. Is that all right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good, we'll try it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I think one way of how a constitutional convention or the delegates to a common discussion could work out, but maybe if we get together on Tuesday and have an open discussion, the people who are here are the most informed.